Let's talk about my clothes and why I plan to only ever take them all off for my future wife. In the music, movies, and books of our modern culture, the guy who has never had sex is almost never portrayed as the man. In fact, there is an attitude out there among some circles that unless you've had sex, you're not only not the man, you're not really an adult yet. You're behind in some way. Virgins are the punchline of a great many jokes, and sometimes the word virgin is used synonymously with the word loser. Point is, if you're a 27-year-old virgin like me, there is something wrong with you. You're either lame, stupid, or an ugly barnacle, according to pop culture in the West. And for most people growing up, the only opposition to the Hollywood, get out there and have sex with someone or you're a weirdo view is their parents yelling, don't have sex until you're married, or you'll go to hell in a handbasket. No reasons are given, just forceful assertions and commands coming from elders who had sex before they were married. In the face of this hypocrisy, many people naturally conclude that there are no good reasons to abstain from sex until marriage and go with the flow of culture by sleeping with their girlfriends or boyfriends because it seems like a lot of fun, and also they don't want to be the odd duck in the pond. Obviously, I believe that there are good reasons to wait until the wedding date. Highly defensible reasons that are countercultural and worth contemplating no matter your sexual history. So without further ado, let's jump into those reasons. When I was 16, I entered my first romantic relationship. I dated this person for just shy of 4 months, and boy oh boy, was it wild. This girl was 2 years older than me, was very sweet and fun, but she had been around. She was always vague on the precise number of guys she'd slept with, but one guy especially treated her as nothing more than a piece of meat. He was the sort of guy who would tell her that he loved her for the purpose of manipulating her into doing things that made her feel like a whore. Like a lot of girls, she did not know how to say no, and so she did what this guy instructed her to do. This resulted in whatever self-confidence she had getting replaced with self-hatred. She swore off sex after breaking up with this guy, but that did not change the fact that severe damage had been done to her by the time she met me. Almost every day, I would flip a coin in an attempt to predict if she'd be in a good mood or a bad mood because she was that emotionally unstable over the entire course of our relationship. She would get angry at me for doing nothing wrong and sometimes nothing at all. I could be sitting quietly and this could trigger a rant that I could not defend myself against. If I made a face that reminded her of this horrible guy from her past, I effectively became that horrible guy in her eyes for a moment. For all intents and purposes, I served as a blank canvas for her projected trauma. Bottom line is, she had a plethora of trust issues because she'd let this guy, and probably others, again, she was vague on the numbers, see her at her most vulnerable point. See her completely naked, and unfortunately, her intimacy was abused. It was used and thrown away just as a condom is used and thrown away. And naturally, her trust in men ended up in the trash can as well. Caring for this injured person had a profound impact on me. I remember being very glad in the midst of our relationship that we had not had sex and had agreed to not have sex unless we got married, because I didn't want to be anything like the guys who had hurt her. Her story, while rough, is sadly not unique. Every girl I've met has some story about a guy who only wanted them for sex. This brings to mind rough-skinned newts, and no, that is not innuendo for penises. In Netflix's Our Planet Season 1 Episode 8, a female rough-skinned newt is swarmed by a band of males, all wanting to make her his. The males have no regard for the harm they could do to her in their pursuit of sex, and what's worse is that the scenes you're seeing on screen are not rare. Competition is so vigorous during mating season that, in the words of David Attenborough, the females in the center of these writhing balls
have been known to drown for lack of air.
I think my first girlfriend would identify with this situation, and tragically, I think a lot of other women would too. At various points in their life, but particularly when they're young, they get swarmed by a band of dudes who don't care if they drown for lack of air. Again, I don't want to be anything like such men, and I don't want to contribute to the culture that produces them. Of course, a lot of guys who have sex before marriage are not rapacious, rough-skinned newts. They treat their partners well and genuinely love and care about them. Still though, one of the reasons I prefer to wait is because I've met plenty of women who still carry around a lot of baggage from sexual relationships that were not toxic. They dated guys who were great in the manner I just described. But then the relationship with them didn't end great. Not because of abuse, but because relationships sometimes just end ugly. Now, years later, those blissful orgasmic memories they have of being with that great guy are regrets. Or worse, have been transformed into wounds that they have trouble getting over. To illustrate the difference, when my first girlfriend broke up with me, within 2 days, I was on top of the world. I came out of this cloud of lovey-dovey emotional delusion and was so glad to be single. I had free time to read books and hang with friends again. I was happy. I didn't expect to get over her so quickly, but I did. And she got over me quickly too. And I think the biggest reason we got over each other so soon is because we never once did the deed. If we'd played with each other's privates, I honestly believe that coming out of the cloud of emotional delusion would have been an experience of regret for me, not joy. Because here's the thing, while that girl was not a bad person, looking back, she is not someone I would want to lose my virginity to. But in the midst of the cloud, there were times when I thought to myself, well, hey, if it happens, it happens. Thankfully, it didn't happen, because it is my suspicion that if we'd been having sex for 4 months, it would have taken me another 4 months to get over her, not just a mere 2 days, because sex, as my virgin brain understands it, literally bonds you to the person you're with in a profoundly deep way. That's why it's recommended that young married couples have sex often. It strengthens the psycho/physical relationship. But as a consequence of this strengthening, I've observed that the capacity for heartbreak increases also. I've seen so many people have catastrophically dramatic breakups, and I'd bet money that a not insignificant portion of that drama can be attributed to their sexual bond being ripped to shreds. The risk of this kind of heartbreak is present in the context of marriage, no doubt. Divorce is a thing. But by pursuing my spouse, whoever she ends up being, as just a person for a couple years without sleeping with her, I think will help me see more clearly if she is a person worth taking the risk of marriage and sex on, thus making my marriage more likely to succeed. Seeing things clearly is clearly very important to me. I've known so many guys who have been in that cloud of lovey-dovey emotional delusion and continued dating their girlfriend even though things were obviously not healthy, but since they were having sex with them, they couldn't see reality clearly at all. For me, kissing, hugging, cuddling, holding hands, and saying I love you is disorienting enough. From observing others, adding intercourse into the mix makes the fog of passion complete and beyond treacherous. It's like with every woman I date in the future, I don't want to be under the illusion that I'm in love with them, when in truth, I'm in love with their pussy. I think it would be better if I thought with the head that rests on my shoulders instead of the head that rests at the end of my penis. So I'm bowing out until I do. Another reason I want to wait is, as I just alluded to, sex outside of marriage is treacherous. Not only for the reasons I just spelled out, but because children. I don't want to risk the chance of impregnating someone before I'm ready to be a father, which I'm not. Yes, birth control and condoms have gotten better and better over the years, and birth control plus condoms makes babies very unlikely. But I still know people who got pregnant even though they had access to those things. I just don't want to risk it. I don't want to accidentally throw away all my hopes and dreams because I got too excited one night with a girl. I don't want to have to cancel all my life plans for 15 seconds of bliss. But the core reason I want to wait is that I want my wedding night to be a truly special and unique night. The most maddening aspect of pop culture's messaging on sex is that it preaches to the average American that sex is the most special experience one can have. while simultaneously preaching that it's quote-unquote just sex and you should do it with everyone, thus making it not very special at all. I, on the other hand, see it as deserving the utmost reverence and want to first experience it in a context that is appropriately sacred, because I think sex is sacred. One of the few movies that actually does shed light on this sacredness is my favorite movie, Braveheart. In the first third of the film, we see William Wallace marry his childhood love, Muron, in secret to avoid the rapacious appetites of England's prima nocta policy. After the wedding ceremony, we see William and Muron come together. The look on Muron's face before she turns to reveal herself to her husband is mixed with longing, fear, and vulnerability. The look on William's face is filled with longing and awe, but also the recognition that he must be careful not to mishandle his wife's naked soul in this most sacred of all moments. Then Muron turns and the two embrace each other, becoming one flesh. The scene is colored from start to finish with the unspoken truth that this is their first time together. It's a scene that has always stuck with me because it depicts what I want on my wedding night. But if I have sex before marriage 100 times with a girl and then decide that I want to marry her, the specialness of our wedding night will be significantly diminished and the uniqueness almost entirely lost. We won't experience the great reveal illustrated in Braveheart because we will have already seen everything there is to see 100 times before. There will be nothing new under the sheets other than rings on our fingers and the knowledge that we are now married. These are not insignificant things. But they're also not seeing your true love naked and completely vulnerable for the first time in the confines of a marriage built on the idea that what you are about to do is uniquely sacred. On top of this, I want to wait because I don't want to have any sexual expectations for my wife to live up to. I don't want whoever my wife is to feel like she has to measure up to the other women I've had sex with. And I think it'd be great if she had no expectations for me as well.
But don't you want to get good at sex before you tie the knot, man? I mean, you don't buy a car without test driving it first.
This is an objection that I've heard countless times before in podcasts and other forms of entertainment that I think should be dismantled. First of all, this is dehumanizing language. No. I don't want to test drive my wife's ability to satisfy me sexually before I marry her because my wife is not a car. Also, I don't want to be good at sex before my wedding night. You heard that correctly. I don't want to be good at sex before my wedding night because I want to get good at sex with my spouse when our sexual relationship begins on our wedding night and builds over the decades that we are married to each other. I want my wife to know that she alone knows what I'm like in my naked and complete vulnerability. I want her to know that her husband, before he even laid eyes on her, said no to the other girls because he didn't want to bring any baggage into the bedroom from the past that could blind him to the majesty of her present beauty and his duty to protect it for the rest of his life. So those are the bulk of my reasons for why I want to wait to have sex until marriage. I spent a lot of time fleshing out the script for this portion of the video because in the first video I made on this subject when I was 20 called "Should Virgins Be Made Fun Of?", one of my Muslim fans left this comment. Thanks a lot for this video. As a Muslim, I have been told that sex before marriage is forbidden, but no one has explained the reasons because everyone is so ashamed to talk about it that I had to search for myself, and unfortunately got exposed to so many things that I shouldn't have seen or came across as a 10-year-old at the time. Again, if you are a parent who yells at your child to not have sex until marriage while taking no time to discuss with them the reasons for waiting versus not waiting, then your lack of communication may well end up being a contributor to their fall into sexual injury online or in the real world. With that strong admonishment out of the way, I do want to say here that I don't judge myself to be a superior being when compared to those who have chosen not to wait. If I thought myself to be above those who have sex before marriage, then I would have no friends. Because who wants to be friends with a guy who thinks he's better than everyone? I have many friends who treat their girlfriends or boyfriends very well in the midst of their romantic sexual relationships, and I have no qualms with them personally because I know that they genuinely love and care about who they are with. With that being said, I would not be choosing the virgin path if I did not think it was the wiser road for all the reasons I've laid out in this video. It's like, if I didn't think that trying to wait until marriage was the better idea, then I can assure you that I would not be trying to wait, cause this is not easy. In the words of his dudeness.
Waiting to have sex until you're married is like Paul Atreides getting handsy with Grandma Gesserit.
Silence.
It is an excruciating experience to wait, but by waiting, by disobeying the instinct to flee from the suffering of delayed satisfaction, you find that the answer to the Reverend Mother's question,
An animal caught in a trap will gnaw off its own leg to escape. What will you do?
is that you are a human who can make choices, not an animal enslaved to impulses. And that if you've made the choice to undergo this excruciating experience, you therefore have the power of free will to see it through. Of course, the biggest difference between walking the abstinence road and passing the test of the Gom Jabbar is that Paul Atreides had to keep himself from removing his hand from the black box of pain, whereas the virgin who longs for his wedding night has to resist the temptation to stick his penis into the pink box of joy, otherwise known as
vagina.
Aldous Huxley's novel Brave New World comes to mind with regard to this struggle. In it, the character John the Savage grew up on an Indian reservation with traditional morals and no modern technology. But then, as a consequence of bizarre revelations, he travels to the Brave New World where traditional morality, and especially chastity, is considered taboo and backwards. John soon becomes bewildered by the quote-unquote advanced civilization and simply cannot connect with the women in it, such as Lynetta Crown, who have been so thoroughly brainwashed that they cannot understand why he won't sleep with them like everyone else. As a result of this frustrating circumstance and others, John eventually loses his mind and hangs himself at the end of the novel. Sometimes I feel like John the Savage in the Brave New World, although it must be acknowledged that John was partly to blame for his own undoing. John was so extreme in his commitment to sexual purity that he would flog himself after merely touching Lynetta. He went way overboard in his effort to be white as snow that he ended up being a filthy dead body hanging in a lighthouse. So while he's no role model for the balanced, chaste life, I do relate to his circumstance. If everyone around me was choosing to wait until marriage to have sex, I don't think this trail would be such a difficult hike. But since almost no one around me has made the choice to wait, feelings of alienation, loneliness, and despair have gotten the better of me on many occasions. These feelings are not unique to the virgin road, however, especially loneliness. The rough draft for the script of this video is being written in the opening months of 2025. By the time it is released, I will have been single for over a decade. I've only kissed one other girl than the girl I dated when I was 16 and have no current prospects. This is the reality of a great many men in the West, although a lot of those men are probably involuntarily celibate as opposed to voluntarily celibate, which is what I am. Point is, though, is that it really doesn't make a difference whether you're trying to wait or trying to not wait with respect to whether or not you'll be desirable in the dating pool of the brave new real world in which we inhabit. And contrary to the YouTube red pill dating scene, this epidemic of romantic loneliness is not solely a male issue, although it may be slightly more severe at the present moment, nor is it a singularly modern problem. The following poem was written by Emily Dickinson, a woman who was only recognized for her incredible worth after she died in 1886, and who knew more about this subject than me or anyone I've ever known. She uses a phrase at one point, Van Diemen's Land, which is in reference to Tasmania. If you were coming in the fall, I'd brush the summer by, with half a smile and half a spurn, as housewives do a fly. If I could see you in a year, I'd wind the months in balls, and put them each in separate drawers, until their time befalls. If only centuries delayed, I'd count them on my hand, subtracting till my fingers dropped into Van Diemen's land. If certain, when this life was out, that yours and mine should be, I'd toss it yonder like a rind, and taste eternity. But now, all ignorant of the length of time's uncertain wing, it goads me like the goblin bee that will not state its sting. This poem made me weep the first time I read it because I found that this woman, who died well over 100 years ago, fully understood how I have felt for many years. In the first 4 stanzas, she describes what her attitude would be if she only knew how long she'd have to wait in order to be with her person. If she only had to wait until fall, then she'd brush the summer by. If she only had to wait a year, then she'd wind the months in balls and put them each in separate drawers until their time befalls. If she had to wait centuries, no problem, she'd just subtract them with her poetic fingers. And if she only had to wait until this life was out, then she'd gladly die right now. But as the last stanza communicates, she is ignorant of the length of time she'll have to wait, and possibly ignorant of who her love is, or if they even exist. To make things worse, she cannot stoically divorce herself from contemplating them. She is poked and prodded daily. The idea of her significant other, and when she'll meet them, goads her like the goblin bee that will not state its sting. I don't know what a goblin bee is, but that freaky language definitely matches up with the bewildering experience of having been single for 10 years. The reality of who I am to love, or if they even exist, refuses to reveal itself to me. The prospect just bugs me all the time without relinquishing any information. It doesn't state its sting. To make things even more bewildering, the last time I watched Interstellar, I was surprised to feel empathy for one of its most corrupt characters. Matt Damon plays Dr. Mann, whom you're told in the lead up to meeting him is an almost saint-like figure. Dr. Mann was the leader of the Lazarus missions. He convinced 11 scientists to join him on a one-way mission to survey 12 potentially habitable worlds on the other side of a wormhole. When the new mission led by Cooper, our McConaughey space farmer, wakes Dr. Mann from his slumber, it is immediately clear that loneliness has had its way with him. He has been alone on an icy planet for ages and has lost the plot. We discover his lunacy when he tries to murder Cooper and reveals that he lied about his world ever being able to support life. What I'd like to draw your attention to, though, are the words he says right before attacking Cooper.
I never really considered the possibility that my planet wasn't the one.
About 6 years ago or so, I had a conversation about marriage with a guy in college that has stuck in my mind ever since. This guy said that even though getting married is normal, it's not a given. Some people try all their lives to find someone and don't. My response was that no, if you seriously want to get married, you can find someone. I mean, come on. So we disagreed and went our separate ways. The funny thing is that guy is probably married now, whereas I can't even escape singlehood. I don't particularly want to be married at this age, but I just never really considered the possibility that I would find myself in this prolonged solitary circumstance. I never thought that I would be a man alone on an icy planet for ages. In truth, this is all a load of melodramatic hogwash. I don't live alone on an icy planet. I live on planet Earth, populated by trillions of trees and billions of people. I'm not Dr. Mann. I don't creepily talk about children's faces while attempting to murder McConaughey Cooper, and I'm also not Emily Dickinson, brother. Alright, keep the high eye, not the low eye. The high eye. I love that girl, but the primary reason she died without ending up with her love is because she was a recluse. She was not found because she made herself hidden. While it's not a given that I'll find romantic love and get married, Part of the reason I have not come close to these things is my own fault. I only recently started getting involved with community groups at my church and local bookstores, and so I naturally didn't find myself coming into contact with people very often in recent years. Moral of the story is, while I cannot tell you how to find a significant other, I can say that you will have no chance of escaping romantic or platonic loneliness if you do not put yourself out there. You are not stuck on a barren planet on the other side of a lifeless wormhole. You can step out your door, visit a church group, a book club, movie club, etc., and at the very least find human connection, and perhaps romantic connection as well. Whether you are a virgin waiting until marriage, a virgin trying to get laid, or a non-virgin who just so happened to stumble upon this video, I hope you will have found it stimulating. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video if you found it worthwhile. With that, I say farewell, and do not spend the rest of today without being in the presence of another human face. And no, masturbating and watching the faces of porn stars doesn't count. Neither does your reflection in the mirror. It is not good for man to be alone, so don't be, even if it just means sitting quietly in the presence of others. I love you all. Peace out.